Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on AI. And you know what? Its story is way longer and honestly, way more dramatic than you might think. Let's dive in.
I mean, it feels like AI just exploded onto the scene, right? One day it wasn't here, the next it's everywhere. But the truth is, this was no overnight success. It's actually a story full of incredible highs, some pretty spectacular lows, and these brilliant ideas that took decades to finally pay off. So, to really get a handle on where we are now, we have to rewind the clock. I'm talking all the way back to this really optimistic time right after the war. A time when a truly revolutionary idea was born from one simple, but huge question. Could we actually make a machine think? Okay, so our journey today is basically going to unfold in 4 acts. We'll start with that initial dream back in the 50s. Then we'll hit the AI winter, a total bust. After that, a quiet period of rebuilding. And finally, the revolution that's happening right now.
You know, in the very beginning, the dream was so simple, but at the same time, just profound. You had these researchers, right, at the famous Dartmouth conference in '56, and they weren't just trying to build better calculators. No way. They were imagining programs that could reason and plan and solve problems, basically just like us. So the first real spark of what we now call machine learning, it came from a place you might not expect, a game of checkers. Yeah. In 1959, this guy Arthur Samuel built a program to play checkers. But here's the magic trick. It wasn't just programmed with the rules. It actually learned from every single game it played, getting smarter and smarter on its own. It was the first time anyone had really seen proof that a machine could learn from experience.
Okay, so the excitement is building, right? The promises are huge. But all of that was about to hit a brick wall of reality. The dream was about to get put on ice for a long, long time.
And this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? The gap between the promise and the reality was just massive. The ambition was there, but the tech just couldn't keep up. You have to remember, computers back then were ridiculously slow, there was hardly any data to feed these things, and the clever tricks that worked for a simple game just completely fell apart when you tried to solve a messy real-world problem. So what happens when the hype dies? Well, progress grinds to a halt. The funding just dries up. The whole field's got this reputation for making big promises and not delivering. And this whole period, well, it got a name, the AI winter. The entire field basically went into hibernation.
But here's the really interesting part of the story. Even during this AI winter, when it seemed like nothing was happening, a few dedicated researchers just kept going. They were working in the background, quietly building the tools that would eventually, decades later, spark a massive comeback. And let's talk about 3 of the most important building blocks that were invented during this time. Because honestly, these are the algorithms that power pretty much all the AI you interact with right now. All right, first up is something called backpropagation. It really got perfected in the 1980s. The best way to think about it is like teaching by correcting mistakes. An AI network tries to solve a problem, gets it wrong, and backpropagation is the process that sends a message all the way back through the network saying, nope, that was wrong. Tweak yourselves this way to get closer next time. It's basically the engine of modern learning for AI. Next, we have convolutional neural networks, or CNNs. This idea, first proposed back in 1980, is a perfect example of taking inspiration from nature. They're basically designed to mimic how our own visual cortex works in our brains, processing little bits of an image at a time in layers. And it turns out, that's an absolutely fantastic way to teach a computer how to see. And the third piece of the puzzle from 1997 are LSTMs. Now, this was a game changer. Why? Because it gave AI a form of memory, a way to remember what happened earlier in a sequence. Think about a sentence. You have to remember the beginning to understand the end, right? Well, that's what LSTMs let an AI do. It's totally essential for understanding language. So picture this. You've got these incredible tools, backpropagation, CNNs, LSTs. They've all been invented, but they're kind of just sitting on the shelf, waiting. And that brings us right up to the modern era, where these quiet inventions are about to meet their moment and create an absolute explosion. It was like a perfect storm. 3 different things came together all at once. First, you had the algorithm breakthrough. In 2006, Geoffrey Hinton basically cracks the code on how to train really, really deep networks, and that's what we now call deep learning. Second, the data deluge. Thanks to the internet, we suddenly had these massive data sets like ImageNet with millions of examples for the AIs to learn from. And third, the power. The video game industry, of all things, had been building these super powerful graphics cards, GPUs, that just so happened to be the perfect engine for running all this stuff. So all of a sudden, those tools that were built during the quiet years finally had everything they needed. They had the fuel, all that data, and they had the horsepower, those powerful GPUs. The long, cold AI winter, it was officially over. And if you had to pinpoint one moment, one year when everything changed, it was 2012. At this big image recognition competition, a deep learning model didn't just win, it blew the competition out of the water. It wasn't just a little better, it was a massive leap forward. And everyone knew, right then and there, a new era had just started. So here we are, after this wild 70-year journey of big dreams, crushing disappointments, and incredible breakthroughs. What happens next? Where does this all go from here? Because the story is definitely not over yet. Well, today's top researchers are pushing into some really wild new frontiers. The focus isn't just on AI understanding the world anymore, but on creating new things, images, text, music. We're also seeing a big push towards AI that can teach itself without needing tons of labeled data. And maybe most importantly, as these systems get more and more powerful, there's a huge effort to figure out how they make decisions and to build them ethically so we can make sure they're used for good. And that really leaves us with the biggest question of all. Think about it. This entire journey, from a simple checkers game to technology that can change our world, was mostly driven by a pretty small group of researchers. But now it's in everyone's hands. It's in your hands. So the real question isn't what's next for AI, it's what are we going to do with it?